Welcome back to class, everybody. We are in week 5 of English 111. I enjoyed reading everyone's essays that you turned in this past Sunday. I have read all of them and I have entered grades along with a couple of comments to each of you. Please take a look when you can. I thought for the most part these were very well done. Let's take a look at what we're going to be doing this week. And we're going to go into class sessions and take a look at session 5. As you'll see, the purpose of session 5 is to get you accustomed to critical thinking and the practice of analysis in your writing. Here are the objectives and content that we'll be covering. And here are the list of activities for this week. Unlike prior weeks, there's less writing this time, but there's more reading. I know, right? For this week, you're going to read Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 from the textbook. You have one writing project to do, but it's only the first 6 steps and you're only writing a draft. It's not the final essay. For that, you're going to review the core readings, including analysis of what you wrote about for the first essay. And there are 2 supplemental resources: a library tutorial on how to find outside sources for your analysis paper, and a supplemental resource on MLA citations. Again, this includes both APA and MLA. We don't use APA, so you can disregard that part of it. Before we go on to the assignments and assessments, I want to direct your attention to one outside source that you may find helpful. If you simply type in citation machine into Google or whatever database you're using, you'll get a lot of hits for things like Citation Machine, EasyBib, BibMe, CiteFast, Citation Builder, and on and on and on. If you go through each of these pages, I'm sure there are hundreds of these. But we're going to take a look at Citation Machine and do a couple of examples so you can see how these citation formatters can help you. What these do for free is properly put the information on your works cited page. Again, we're only using MLA, not APA or Chicago. So let's pick one and do a couple of examples and see how it goes. You notice it has citation generation for books, magazines, newspapers, websites, journals, film. Other could be YouTube videos, things you heard on radio, television broadcasts you've seen, etc. There's a million of these. So I'm going to use an example of one of my textbooks. And let's see what it comes up with. Notice I entered the Norton Anthology of English Literature. This has been published for decades, and there's a lot of different versions. But the version I am using is listed here. I have the 2012 version, 9th edition, so I'm going to select that one. Now, if I'm taking a quote from the Norton Anthology, it's not going to tell me how to cite that quotation. You still have to come up with that on your own. But in terms of what you put on your works cited page, it automatically fills in all the information because this book is already in the database. Again, I'm using the 9th edition. I checked that by looking at the physical book, the city, the publisher, and the year. And I'm going to select Make Citation. And there is my citation. Once I have this, when I'm going to my works cited page, I could simply copy and paste this, and it should be pretty much correct. Notice there's options to copy and paste down here. Now, As good as Citation Machine is, it isn't perfect, and I've noticed that it has made mistakes at times in the past. So before I turned in my final, I'd want to double check that. Let's take a look at one other example, and this time we'll use a newspaper. I happen to have a newspaper in front of me. And this time I'm going to try manual entry. When I use manual entry, it will ask me a series of questions about the source I'm citing. You can do manual entry for books, magazines, websites, etc. I'm going to fill in the author's name. This only has one author. If there were more, I could select that and include more than one name. Can't type today. And the pages that I'm putting in are the numbers of the pages, not of the section or of the newspaper, but the pages on which the article appears. And then I'm going to click Make Citation. And here it is. Again, I can copy and paste this into my paper on the Works Cited page. It's a pretty good resource, and it's free. Let's take a look at the learning activities for session 5. Again, we're going to be reading chapter 7 and chapter 8 in the 10 core concepts. You can use your physical book or the ebook, which is right here. And then we have a writing project. Just like writing project 1, we're only doing steps 1 through 6 for the draft. For the final version, you'll be following the steps after that. Let's take a look. Make sure when you do this, you click on the correct writing project. Use project 2, not project 1 or project 3. Here's what we'll be doing. For this project, you will analyze 2 of the core readings. One of them has to be the core reading you used for writing project 1, the one we finished last week. You're going to write a comparative analysis between the article you used in writing project 1 and another article that's also in core readings. I recommend you use another article that's in the same folder. That would be easier. Step 1 is to look at chapter 7 as well as step 1 of chapter 3, and this will guide you in developing a working question. For this project, the audience is me and the rest of the folks in the class. You can use this to develop your audience, your time, and your place, and your purpose. Notice you're going to write about 750 words for your draft. When you turn in the final version, of course, it will be more. We are using only MLA style, not APA. Here's the question you're going to answer. And you could look at any of these. Take a look at your first core reading, the one you used for your first writing project, and one other, and discuss in your paper, your draft, the differences and similarities regarding the relative credibility of the core readings and their authors, and on and on and on. You don't have to do all of these, simply do one. You could talk about the similarities in the author's interpretation of the facts and information, most likely because they're on the same subject. Or you could talk about how the two are different. It's up to you. Your first draft will be due in this class session. And here are some additional resources that you need to look at. Once you have your draft complete, you're going to turn it in. You're going to submit both your situation analysis and your first draft. And again, your situation analysis would be on a separate sheet, very short, that describes the audience, the time, and the place, and the purpose. You'll recall that in the first writing project, I gave out a little bit of bad advice and told you this was optional. Well, this time it's not, because we're all on the same page now. We're stopping at step 6. The rest of this, step 7 and on, you don't have to worry about that now. That'll be for week 6. So read this document, steps 1 through 6, carefully. And if you have questions, let me know. Speaking of your first draft, let's talk just a little bit about that. And this is some of the experiences I saw based on the final version of Writing Project 1. There are still a few folks that are not quite formatting their paper exactly right. And I have Brianne's paper from the first writing project as an example because this one is done very well. Notice she has her last name in the page number in the upper right hand corner, and her last name and the subsequent page number are on all the pages. That's exactly how it should be done. She has her name, my name, the class name, and then the date. Your first draft for this writing project will be due on 15 February 2015. So make sure you use that date. When you turn in the final version at the end of session 6, you'll need to change that date to 22 February 2015. So for the draft, this should be 15 February, and for the final version, you turn in after week 6, it'll be 22 February. Some folks forgot to change that date, or they listed the date in which they wrote it. Well, it doesn't really matter to me when you write it. What it matters to me is that it's formatted when it's due. Notice Brianne also has a title, which is centered on the page. That's exactly right. And all of her paragraphs are indented. There were a couple of folks that still were using single space writing. That's not MLA format. Make sure you double space everything and include a title. This was a good paper. Let's go back to class sessions. We've already talked about the activities. They're also here in this folder. There's the link to the core readings. You'll need that for the writing project. Here are the supplemental resources. Again, these are optional. Use them if you think you need to. And let's look at assignments. For session 5, we're going to start a new discussion board. And this one should be pretty entertaining. We're employing everyday rhetorical analysis. For your session 5 discussion board, you're going to pick one of these scenarios, options 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you're going to write 2 posts in the voice of the person described here. Each of these posts should be about 100 words. You don't have to write this as if it's a true story. You can be creative and make things up. Use your imagination. Pick any one of these. You don't have to do them all. That would be too much. And write as if you were, for example, option 1, a teenager describes a party to his parent and then later describes the same party to a friend. Let's take a look at one of these because there's an example that's on the discussion board already. Again, when you're ready to compose, you'll start a new thread, create thread here, give it a title, and complete it. I always compose in Microsoft Word and cut and paste everything into the discussion board in my own classes because if I use Microsoft Word, I can hit spell check. But here we'll see that Mike has chosen Session 5, Option 1, the teenager at the party, first describing the party to his parents, and then later describing the party to a friend. This one's pretty good. That'll give you a model to go off of. Let's go back to class sessions, see what else is there. Under assignments and activities. For this week, although it says discussion 5 and session 6, we're only doing 5. And that is where you're going to write your initial post using one of these options. You should write about 100 words for option A and 100 words for option B, regardless of which of these you choose. So the total that you're writing is about 200 words. Next, we're going to go to the writing project. This is just your draft. If it has mistakes in it, that's fine. We'll fix those in the final version. This is where you are following steps 1 through 6 of the core writing. You're going to post your first draft in 2 places, here by checking on Browse My Computer and on the discussions page. Notice it says peer response by your peers in session 6. Don't have to worry about that just yet. We'll do that next week. That's for the discussion, not for the writing project. I wanted to make sure I showed you this. Here's where you post. Let me get back up just a little bit. This is where you're posting your discussion on everyday rhetorical analysis. That's where you're picking the options. That's the one I showed you that Mike had already done. And here is where you're putting your draft of Writing Project 2. That's the one based on the core readings. Send a copy to me and also post a copy here. Let's take one more look at class session 5. Make sure we have everything. So again, 2 chapters to read. Writing Project 2, make sure you click on the right folder. Only steps 1 through 6. Core readings, you're going to base your draft on the core reading you wrote about for for Writing Project 1 and one other. You're going to go to the discussion board and do 2 activities. The first one is only 200 words, choosing one of these options. Be creative. And the second one, you're going to post your draft of your core readings essay. Post it here and send a copy to me. I want to say one more thing about the essay that you just turned in. I'm assuming everyone is aware of this, but I'll mention it again just to make sure we're all on the same page. When you turn in your final version, not your drafts, you turn in your final version, you have to turn it in to turnitin.com. And turnitin.com is a database that checks what you've submitted against other student writing. Everyone in the class had some matches on turnitin.com, and that's because you're taking information from somewhere else and including it in your paper. That's fine, provided you tell me where that information came from. If I see a match and I look at your paper and I see that you put something at quotes, or you told me in the paper where it came from, then all is well. There were a few examples I saw where someone didn't tell me where they got it from, and I wasn't too critical because that was your first writing project. However, we're now on our second writing project, and I'm going to look at those a little more closely. It's absolutely fine to take information from outside sources and put it in your paper. What you have to do is tell me where it came from if it's not original to you. I think that's it for the week. Everyone's doing good work on the course so far. I hope you're enjoying it. I know I certainly am. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.